Hi, BookTube on 3.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Hi,
Hi, BookTube! This is Bertie's Books with Liz.
Gareth.
Can you say your name clearly?
Gareth.
Yeah, thank you. And Bertie, of course, who doesn't want to be here again. We've obviously
He's
filmed
bored.
this. Oh, are you bored? Okay. You want to? Okay. You want mommy to eat. Ooh, gosh, careful, bud. We're obviously filming this right after we film the newbie tag.
So we're reviewing 2 modern books.
2 modern books and 1 classic.
1 classic. So the book I'm reviewing is The Ministry of Utmost Happiness by Arundhati Roy. This has just come out in paperback this year. And in all frankness, I don't think my mind was quite up to it when I read.
Well, we should explain.
It kind of bombarded me.
We should explain something though before we get on to reviewing, which is that you and I read books incredibly differently.
Yeah, you read them well, and I just kind of blunder through them.
Well, we have different reading speeds and different reading styles, and we're going to make a whole video on that.
I feel like it's a book that I need to reread already, so that I think that attests maybe to the richness of the book in terms of the themes, characters, in terms of the politics. I mean, Arundhati Roy, this was her 2nd novel after The God of Small Things, which was published in 1997. And in between these 2 books of fiction, she published about 10 or 11 books of non-fiction. She's extremely left-wing, a political activist, quite an extraordinary person, extraordinarily intelligent. And this deals with the last 40 years or so of Indian history. And that's a subject that I'm practically clueless on. So while I was reading it, I felt like, oh God, I need to really read up on Indian history, recent Indian history anyway. The thing that I really enjoyed about it was the prose. I mean, the prose is really lyrical, really beautiful, really rich, colourful.
You said to me one night, you just turned to me and said, "Oh, you should read this. It's so well written." That's all he said, but
there's a lot of violence in it. So something I didn't realise about India at all is how violent its history has been. The problem I had with following it was that there's not really much of a plot, at least to begin with. It seems like a lot of very interesting characters sort of wandering around and eventually becoming connected. But I don't feel like I really have a particularly good review here because I can't really describe it very well. So I'll let you review the outside and we'll talk about Wuthering Heights, which I can't.
He can talk about that one. I was thinking I should make you like a little form so when you're reading you can write down things so you can remember them. Because he has trouble remembering things that happen in books, which sounds counterintuitive to doing a PhD in English literature, but it's fine. Yeah, it makes it hard, but it's not impossible. So I read The Outsider, which is Stephen King's new novel. It's on my Kindle, so I don't have a copy to hold up, all pretty. And I can actually talk in depth about it, Gareth, because
it's so basic.
No, actually, I mean, if we're going to talk basic, unfortunately it is quite a basic novel. There were a lot of things about the novel I really wanted to work. I went into it already knowing that it was a sort of sequel to the Mr. Mercedes series. And I also knew that the reviews were quite mixed because of the supernatural elements in the book. I mean, to be honest, the problem wasn't with the supernatural element. The problem was that it was so by the book's detective mystery that I was never left surprised or shocked by anything that happened. and it was quite disappointing to read. It became a chore almost to get through because I felt no threat when I was like the characters never felt like they were under threat. It was very basic, straightforward. I mean, it was great to see Holly Gibney again. Holly Gibney is a character from Mr. Mercedes, and if you've read that,
which you liked, didn't you?
I liked the Mr. Mercedes trilogy. That said, I didn't quite care for the third one, which is where the supernatural aspect kind of came in.
It's the one thing that Stephen King can do is supernatural, and that's the problem.
No, the issue more for me, like I said, it wasn't the supernatural bit. I would have been fine with that. I read a lot of stuff. There's a series, a Daniel Faust series that I read that's like a Las Vegas magician sort of thing. But it's like, you know, I don't mind that kind of thing. So if it randomly pops up in my book, I'm not gonna, you know, it's not gonna skew my review unless it's poorly done. In this case, it wasn't that it was poorly done in terms of adding the supernatural aspect. It was just poorly done in terms of plot. The characters are just flat kind of archetypes, you know, good guy cop, did one little bad thing, now he's trying to make up for it. And there was just nothing on the line. I don't know. I was kind of disappointed, especially because this was Holly Gibney's first solo outing. I thought, you know, God, it could have been so much more, but it was not. So unfortunately, I wouldn't recommend The Outsider to anyone unless they absolutely adored the Mr. Mercedes series and wanted more of Holly Gibney, no matter what the cost. Which is pretty much just your time, maybe your patience. But yeah, that's my review. I don't really know how to end it. The end.
Yeah, end of review.
End of review. And now...
so this is our classic.
Is our joint.
Wuthering Heights. So basically you think all the characters are awful people.
No. Well... No. I think they're well-written awful people. So, they're not awful. Like, the characters aren't awful. They are awful people, but they are very well-written awful people, which I do like. Yeah,
because I've seen reviews of Wuthering Heights where people say, oh, I hated it, I didn't like any of the characters, I couldn't identify with any of them.
You don't always have to identify with characters.
Who cares, you know? Because you can't identify with anyone, you're becoming a critical reader of the characters and what they're doing, what their motivations are, and so on.
Yeah.
So, that actually makes for, ironically, paradoxically, a more immersive experience than I think you would have with a Stephen King book.
Yeah. We had a really good discussion earlier about the book being a ghost story or not a ghost story. And
well, because when as I said in the last video, I read this when I was 16, and over time, when I thought back to it, I always thought, oh, it's a ghost story, because of the hand through the window, and because I thought that either Lockwood or Nellie had seen them running hand in hand on the moor at the end. That's not true. So this is the second time I've read it, and it's been quite a long time.
That's only the second.
Yeah,
oh, I'm surprised.
It's not a ghost story. It's he dreams the hand through the window. He and the sightings on the moor of the ghost of Cathy and Heathcliff are actually just reported, just conjecture.
But see, I thought that it was a ghost story. Because
it's got the atmosphere of a ghost story.
It has the atmosphere of a ghost story. I know, just because you don't have, I want to say a physical ghost, but that's an oxymoron. I think, because we also talked about myth making, and you were talking about how Heathcliff is pretty much making himself into a myth, kind of like Catherine already is, and they're mythical in their little tiny world between the Grange and Wuthering Heights, and it's just this kind of like little microcosm of a world. And I think though that you can say it's kind of like a ghost story though, because what's a ghost story but a myth?
I think Heathcliff feels Cathy as a ghostly presence after she dies. But I don't think it's a ghost story in the sense.
Oh, I don't know. I would disagree. I would call it a ghost story, not a traditional ghost story, obviously. But I think there's an argument there.
Wrong. Well, when I was talking about myth making, I was talking about how Heathcliff is such a great character because he's presented in such a way as you only get glimpses of who he really is. So when Lockwood first encounters him, he's what was it? Look of peevish displeasure. Peevish is a word that comes up about 50 times.
You could say everyone's quite peeved him.
Yeah. So yeah, everyone's quite peevish in the novel. But Heathcliff, there's an extraordinary scene early on where Lockwood dreams the hand, and then he comes in and Heathcliff shouts out the window for Cathy to come back.
Big Cathy, not little Cathy.
Yeah, big Cathy. And that's what I mean when I say to Heathcliff it is a ghost story, but it's not a ghost story to us. Or to me, I mean.
Oh, what if you took apart the frame narrative, Gareth? Could you?
Go on.
Yeah. So you've got Lockwood telling Nellie's story as she's telling it to him, and interspersed you have other bits. You've got Isabella's letter. You've got another Isabella monologue as well. You also have several little Cathy monologues.
I feel like it could have been the biggest mess anyone ever created.
It could have.
And yet somehow it works brilliantly. I don't know if Emily Brontë was...
Or you can say Frankenstein.
Emily Brontë was a natural novelist because she wrote poems as well, really, really good poems. Mm-hmm. And I think writing a novel really came hard to her.
We were talking about how well the frame narrative works in this, and then we were trying to think of other novels that came before it that had frame narratives, and the only one we could really think of that, it's not the only one, but the biggest one was obviously Frankenstein. And again, that shares several common themes with Wuthering Heights, and we've got the gothic elements.
Yeah, it seems like such an original novel.
Yeah, regret, jealousy.
To try to find precursors was quite difficult. Frankenstein being one. I've never read Melmoth the Wanderer, but I know that it's stories within stories within stories, so I may wonder if it's in any way similar. Apparently Byron's Manfred is similar.
Oh God,
but I can't imagine.
Ages ago.
Oh, right.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
And in terms of Heathcliff, I think that so generally throughout the book he's a really miserable, unpleasant, spiky, nasty creature. Towards the end he changes a little bit. I couldn't help thinking of Edmund from King Lear, who suddenly changes at the end.
Did you think of that, or did a critic think of that?
A critic may have thought of that before, but...
Okay. Because I remember you mentioning it to me, but I couldn't remember what context.
I'm sure some critic has written something on that, because
I'm pretty sure I've read something like that.
Everything's been thought and written.
Pretty much.
But it came to me...
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, I couldn't remember. We've been talking about critics for a bit today.
But we haven't mentioned our favourite character, Joseph! Who I think Emily Brontë must have really hated one of her servants, if they had servants, I don't know. I need to read
I think
biography.
Yeah,
But he is character assassination, I think. He's not a character, he's awful. Everything he does is terrible, and he talks gobbledygook, really. Yeah. I've tried to do it in a Yorkshire accent, it doesn't quite work. And I've tried a Scottish accent, that doesn't quite work. So it's some
Have
weird
you tried
hybrid.
Welsh?
Nor name me, all I knew Indwit.
Yeah, I don't think
muttered
he's Welsh.
The head, vanishing.
I don't think he's Welsh.
What is that?
I don't know.
And You know,
if
should have
anyone
died in the
knows,
first chapter.
leave an answer down in the comment. Viewers can leave comments, you know.
If we have any viewers. You were talking about the atmosphere earlier.
Yeah, I know the
Really
atmosphere of the
powerful
novel is. I mean, it was.
Conveys the loneliness of the moors.
It really does, and as I said, I keep asking what's on the other side of the Grange. If Wuthering Heights is on one side, why didn't they just go to the other?
A lot of back and forth thing between Thrushcross Grange.
That's why I'm not saying Thrushcross Grange, because just call it the Grange is much easier. Yeah, no, they run back and forth like it's a relay race.
Yeah, it could have been a farce if they'd sped it up a bit. Although it's kind of a farce.
Yeah, I suppose in a Thomas Hardy type way.
Yeah, so we should talk about what we're gonna.
Yeah, what are we doing next?